I know all of you, or most of you, have credit cards in your possessions, but I know also this, that many of you do not have proper skills to use the credit cards in the most possible ways. Welcome to the Money Date. My name is Anna, and I'd love to chat with you today about what are some of the best practices you can put in place and be smart when it comes to using credit cards. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining me. I hope you're enjoying your wonderful Wednesday evening. I'm excited to be here. Now, you guys know that Money Dates are times for us to come together. And as you're hopping on, I appreciate you saying hello. We'd love to have you here. Watch me live. So let me know that you're here. So you know, Money Dates are times that we allow ourselves to check in with our finances. That's the most basic description that I can give about what happens on a money date. Now, there are three things that I want you to be aware of, whether you do this money date with me or you do this some other time. So the three things that I usually suggest my clients and my friends and family and everyone I know to track to stay above the water and be on the top, right? Not feeling like you're stressed out and not on target are very basic things. Number one has to do with your expenses. Number two has to do with your income, and then number three are your savings goals. Those are three items that I want you to stay on the top of from week to week, to month, year to year. These are basic things. Everything could be automated, but the whole idea why I started a money date was because I wanted hi Nir, good to have you here. I wanted to be able to do this for myself, right? And then I'm trying to see if I can see your comments. And then there you go. And then when it wasn't quite working for me around the structure I had, I realized that doing this more consistently would allow me to actually be better and feel better about what I can do. So that's the whole idea about Money Date. Now, I also like to share a particular topic every week with you that I think is beneficial in terms of you learning new money habits. Okay, so that's what we're discussing today. Now, as you hopping on, let me know please in the chat. Also, if you found this useful, please share it out. I appreciate all of that feedback from you and as well as your friends. Always awesome to have more viewers. So one of the things that I think is prudent to mention, and is we're staying on the top of our finances, hopefully, right? We're earning more income, or we're earning great income. We stay within the spending limits that we set for ourselves, and we have a great idea what our savings goals are. It's prudent to talk about what I call a money win for the week. And the reason I want you to do this on a weekly basis is because it's chaotic. I get it. It's busy. Everybody has things that they want to accomplish, family commitments and everything around it. So how can you stay on the top of that and be positive? Because it really comes down to being smart and being intuitive with your mind. And the only way you can do that is if you start with how it feels in your heart, right? Because if it feels right there, there's gonna be connection between the heart and the mind. So I look at that from the perspective of positive moments, the gratitude. So I call them money wins. Now, many of you may know, and I've been posting some of my sort of feedback and experience over the last week, over a week, 9 days today, of the detox that Yuri and I were doing. And so we're drinking smoothies, have been drinking for the last 9 days. Now, I will talk more about once I finish, I have 3 more days to go, what my experience has been about that and how that really relates to finances, because I've kind of learned quite a few interesting things. But one thing so far is that I feel a lot different. 9 days into this, I am hungry, not gonna lie about it. But I'm starting to learn how to manage my hunger. And so also some of the habits that came with me feeling hungry and, immediately running for some kind of snack and everything. I have lost some weight. I'm yet to reveal what that is. I want to finish the full program. But I have a lot of energy. I've not had coffee for 9 days. I don't actually want it. All I really want is a piece of meat. So other than that, I'm good. So it is my money win for a lot of reasons. Feeling great, feeling energized, feeling on point is one of the ways. The other side that came to that is actually what I realized is that I have not spent as much money as I usually would do. So anyway, let me know what your wins are. I always love to hear, because I feel like we don't give ourselves enough time to pause, reflect, and say, shoot, I look at the calendar for these things. It's kind of crazy, but I was flipping through the last 7 days to say, all right, what has happened? What did I do? What kind of meetings did I have? What kind of interactions did I have with people, right? My colleagues, my team, my clients, my family, that I can actually just draw from it. And so it's been interesting. I challenge you to start doing that. I do this on a daily basis, but start on a weekly, then go to daily and see how your life kind of progresses. So that's my money win. Love to hear from you. All right, as I want to get into the actual discussion of the topic, so we're talking about credit cards. We know that that's a way to live, to manage your finances. I have nothing bad against credit cards. I'm a big user of credit cards. I take advantage of all the possible scenarios and options that exist with it. But I find that still there are so many people that just don't understand the basic skills of what it takes, right, to be prudent and smart when using it, right? It seems to be fairly straightforward. And the funny thing is, I was thinking about this today. My experience with how I started using credit cards was not the most pleasant one. Well, I mean, it was. I was in college, right? I think maybe it was my either sophomore or junior year, maybe even, when freshman year, and there were these representatives working around campus, signing everybody left and right for a credit card. And so, of course, I got a credit card. I think I got like 2. But the long story short, I ended up graduating college not only with student loans, but a credit card debt. So if I knew now, if I knew then everything would have been the same, or would have been different. But the point that I'm making is that you can do better. So don't disregard what I'm trying to share with you. Just think about, what can you improve? There's just one thing. All you need to take away from my discussion today is what you can improve. So thanks for hopping on. Hi, Nick. Good to have you here. Hi, Jake. All right, so the number one, I have a couple of tips for you. So number one tip is to pay your balance every month and pay it on time. Now, I know that for some of you it may not be possible, but paying it on time is one of the most important things. It helps avoid credit card fees, right? We know that is something that we all strive to get away from. And the other piece, that it helps improve your credit score. I'll talk about credit score in just a bit, because that credit cards are the most typical type of a loan that everybody has, or a debt, right? It's something that you borrow against, and you have the most actual ability to manage that debt on a monthly basis to maintain your credit score or help improve that credit score. So it really is closely tied into that. Now, here's something to take into consideration. Your FICO score, you're all familiar with that. It's a credit score that is pulled by 3 credit agencies that assesses how well of a credit worthy person you are, right? And so that score determines how lenders look at you and at what rates they actually lend you money. Now, what you need to understand is that payment history and credit utilization ratio make up 65% of that score. I talked about making payments on time. That's gonna tie in. If you don't make your payments on time, that directly reflects and affects 30% of your credit score. So if you're thinking about that in the back of your mind, that's one of the things to do. And I'll share with you some of the tips I have in terms of how to make sure that you actually have that process streamlined. A couple of other things, like how long you have your credit cards, is also important, because, and guess what? Remember I mentioned my credit cards from college? I still have one. Hi, Wanda. How you doing? Good to have you here. Somehow, I'm sorry guys, my comments aren't working, and I can't see who's hopping on and off. So keep putting something in the chat. That way I can follow up with you afterwards. So going back to what I was saying, I mentioned that how, I had a credit card, started using credit cards at the very early age, you know, I still have that credit card. Even though I'm not using it as much or have not used it in a while, I still have it because it helps. That's how long my credit history has been, right? Because that's another portion of that FICO score that's gonna, you know, play into effect. How much of a new credit you actually utilizing? Like, how many more credit cards are you opening? I'm not advocating for you having you know, 5 or 10 credit cards. There's absolutely no need unless you find ways that you need to have credit card for the rewards points, like you collect miles, right? And that's the game I play, is miles, because I travel a lot. Some people like cash back. I mean, all kinds of opportunities there. But it doesn't mean the more credit cards you have, the better it gets for you in terms of improving your credit score. Right? It may provide more opportunity for spending, but I think that directly relates into getting us into trouble. So the other point that makes up your credit score is the credit mix. So what kind of loans do you have? Do you have a credit card? Do you have an auto loan? Do you have a student loan, a car loan, mortgage, personal loan, and so forth, the business loans? All of that impacts the credit score overall. So keep in mind that even though you know from time to time you may not make your payments on time, staying as consistent with it as possible is going to be your best bet. Now, number 2 is to keep your credit utilization ratio. I talked about this. This is the biggest component of what makes up your credit score, under a certain limit. And so the best way to describe it is to not overcharge your credit card. So let's say I'm going to use simple numbers. If your balance is $1,000, or I'm sorry, if your limit on a credit card is $1,000, right? That's all you can spend. One of the things to keep in mind is that to keep your score, and your credit score changes daily with the programs like CreditWise or Credit Karma. You can actually have an app on your phone and you can watch it and see how it changes. But the minute you start spending, right, or charging more than 30% of that credit utilization balance, so if let's say you have $1,000 and you spend more than 30%, that's $300 in this example, that starts creeping up and affecting your credit score. So if you're thinking about this globally, right, and I'll mention also something that there's a way to give you more money, right? Let's say $1,000 is a very low limit. If you need more spending room, sure, you can increase your credit balances, right, or available credit. So try to stay within that limit. Number 3 is to review your monthly statements. This is one of those things that is just funny because we all take it for granted. I get very little mail lately. Everything comes electronically and it just goes into my inbox and that's it, right? And it's just there. I look at it, right? So it relates to everything. Now, where I'm really particular is looking at the monthly statement at the end of the month. Because first of all, I want to make sure that all transactions go through, right? I want to make sure that there are all my charges. My husband and I use the same credit card, right? We joined authorized users on our credit card. So I want to make sure that nothing fishy is happening. Okay, last week, actually, here's an example. Last week, our card got compromised. So we had to cancel it and it reissued us a new card. But that was because somebody got a hold of it somehow and started charging fraudulent transactions. So sometimes those transactions actually go through and you don't realize it. A lot of times banks have structures to actually fraud alerts to catch those. So reviewing that at the end of the month is good. It's also good for knowing where you spend your money. Now, I always advocate for using passive aggregators of where your transactions from all kinds of places, right? From the checking account, from the credit card go. I like Mint, so I can actually see how my spending breaks down without having to look at the credit card, but I still review it. So when I paid the bill at the end of the month, right? So I paid all in full. And very rarely, I don't, have money to do that. But when I pay the bill in full every month and I paid on time, I also go through the transactions to make sure that nothing is going on there. Now, simple things, but are you doing them? That's my question for you. Now, the other thing I want to mention that's kind of handy too is set up mobile alerts. Set up alerts for things like for your bank to notify you if something is weird going on. That's something kind of reminds me because I need to configure this for one of our banks because then you can get text messages, right? Or you can get emails. Yuri is pretty good with emails. So for him, for him to stay on top of that, and that's how he actually knew, because I was in the meeting that day last week when we got our card compromised. He got an email, so he reached out to me immediately, said, "Did you place these transactions?" And I was like, "No, because I'm here in office, so it wasn't me." So whatever medium works for you best, whether text messages or emails, set that up, because it helps you remind of some of these kind of events. The other piece of that I like is that it could remind you if you're spending over a certain amount. You can actually do that. It's a pretty neat feature. Now, the other thing that I want you to think about is that how much of that balance that you actually allocating for your overall transactions. If you're going over, that's an alert that you need to include as well. So check out setting up these kinds of alerts, because I think it can kind of stay in the back of your mind, but you can be reminded when the time comes. Now, I want to talk about sort of my tip number 4 in terms of how to do best with your credit cards is how to, I know a lot of you have credit cards, and it's a no-brainer these days, right? And some of you are maybe rebuilding your credit history, so have done some of these silly mistakes of paying the debts off. It's all part of what's happening. So how about we talk on what's some of the steps you can take in improving your overall credit score, right? Because again, as I talked earlier, credit card is one of the tools. Think of it as a tool, right? It's a tool to help you maybe streamline some of your spending and keep track. It's a tool to help you build your credit score. And it's a tool that actually teaches you to be responsible, right? And it's a tool that gives you rewards, right, if you play the game. So there's lots of benefits of why you're using credit cards. So the credit score piece of it, I think, hi Renata, good to have you, I think is more important, or out of, on the priorities, that's probably top on my list, because not only affects the credit score, but it affects everything that evolves around credit score. And I talked about this on my previous shows, how that changes and what comes up. If you're going to borrow money, how that affects the credit score, how that impacts what kind of rate you're going to get. So here's we talked about payment history and credit utilization being the two biggest components that contribute to your credit score, right? So 65%. So if you are responsible with the first 3 steps that I described, right? Paying on time, paying off the balance, keeping your balance low, utilizing the right percentage of the available credit, and monitoring, right, how your transactions, you're probably doing the best job that you can already do. But others things that we can actually do to improve even better. So I have 4 suggestions here. Number 1, and I tell this to all of my clients, do not ever cancel your credit card. So think about that. As I talked about my example where I got my first credit card when I was in college, I could have canceled that. It was like a $500 credit card. At this point, I have thousands of dollars of credit available to me, not only personally, but a business, through the business as well. So that teeny $500 credit card, I could cancel it, but that kills, right, all that credit history that I've built. Making consistent payments, staying within the limits, and so forth. So unless you can justify for yourself giving up that amount of piece of history, I suggest that you never do that. Some credit cards have fees, so you probably may want to make sure that you kind of think that through. And I know like Chase Bank is one of the most popular, at least from what I'm reading. I was reading NerdWallet earlier today, and they have a really great tool in terms of how to use credit cards and how to select best credit cards. And Chase seems to be at the top of all kinds of selections. Whether you're traveling a lot, you need cash back. It's a business credit card, so they have fees. Right? So weigh in what the benefit is of you continuing to pay that fee and extending your credit history, right? Keeping it longer and building it up versus canceling it, killing that credit history, because all it's going to do is going to show that on the credit report that your account is closed. And right, the other piece of that, if you're not actively using your old credit cards, it could also be closed for inactivity. So that's another side that is something that you need to watch. Now, ask credit card companies, and this is interesting that 8 out of 10 credit card holders, I found this statistic astonishing, do not ask for their credit limit to be increased. Because the second component of that, the biggest piece that affects the credit score is your utilization ratio, right? So if you want to increase that, remember that example I gave about $1,000 being your credit limit and you're using about 30% of it? If you ask that $1,000 to go maybe like to $2,000, all of a sudden your spending amount increased, like it doubled. And the funny thing is, it's never hurts to ask. Yes, they are. When you call a credit card and say, "Hey, credit card company, give me an increase in my credit, limit." Yes, they are going to use your credit report, but that's what it's for. It's there so that you can use it. So it's like, if you can see, these things work together. They don't work in isolation. So you have to think through the steps. But the first piece is that ask. If they don't give it to you now, wait 6 months, come back and do it again. That's how I've built a lot of my credit cards. I say, all right, well, I've paid it back. I'm responsible. I don't carry a balance. How about you give me a little treat? Here's why. And I think maybe once or twice before, not more than that, in my, since I've had my credit cards, hi Stacy, good to have you here. I was never told no. So, and then, the other tip I have is that if you're thinking about acquiring or needing, or you think you're going to need a big loan, right? Whether it's an auto loan or you're thinking to buy a mortgage, to buy a house and you need a mortgage. Think about if you can pay off your credit cards right before, right? Like in a short amount of time, because all it does, it gives your credit score like a huge bump. Right? And so what it does is it helps to increase that credit score tremendously, right? So because you go from having a balance to completely paying off and then applying for a loan right after that. Now, I know for some of us it's sort of a recurring thing because we use it for monthly expenses, whatever spending that you have going on or large purchases. But consider that if you have a big event coming up, that would be one of the things to think about. So, credit cards, at the end of the day, my friends. Hi, Sally. Good to have you here. Thanks for watching. Credit cards are not evil, okay? There are ways that you can be prudent and responsible with it, but if you can just streamline a lot of these things for yourself, I think all of us can do better. So as I close for this money date, I always look up for a funny quote. So this one is kind of stuck in my head. So it says, credit card interest payments are the dumbest money of all. So my suggestion for you today, if out of all of this discussion, is don't make mistakes with your money being dumb, because if we don't get a hold of how we use credit cards and waste it on unnecessary fees, right, and interest payments that we make, and that's not very smart. So I challenge you to think about what you can do better, and I bet that a lot of these things you can streamline. Thanks, my friends, for watching. I will see you next week for another money date. Bye for now.